The Johnsons were the kind of family that carried dignity in their walk, no matter how many times the world tried to strip it away. Michael Johnson, a tall black man in his early 40s, had dark brown skin, broad shoulders hardened by years of construction work, and eyes that told stories of both struggle and survival. His deep voice was steady, the kind that demanded respect even when he whispered. Tonight, he stood over his grill, flipping ribs with a precision that made him look more like an artist than a cook. His wife, Angela, was a striking black woman, with smooth, cocoa-toned skin and soft brown eyes that carried warmth and resilience. She was the heart of the family, always composed, always graceful, even when life tested her patience. Her hands moved gently as she set out fresh lemonade, her smile hiding the exhaustion of holding everyone together. Their son Ethan was 16, tall and lean, with Michael's strong jawline and Angela's warm eyes. His skin was a lighter shade of brown, but the fire in his spirit was unmistakable. He tossed a football in the yard, his laughter booming across the street. Little Kayla, only 10, had Angela's complexion and thick curls that bounced as she danced around the table, helping set plates. She hummed her favorite song, her innocence untouched by the weight her family carried every day. The Johnson home smelled of barbecue ribs and fresh cornbread. Laughter filled the air. For a black family in a mostly white neighborhood, nights like this, simple and peaceful, felt like a small victory. Across the street, behind lace curtains, sat Mrs. Henderson, a white woman in her late 60s. Her skin was pale and wrinkled, her eyes a sharp blue that scanned the neighborhood like a hawk on watch. She clutched a framed photo of Daisy, her small white terrier, who had been missing since morning. Daisy was her only companion, and losing her had cracked something inside. But instead of grief leading her to compassion, it fed an uglier part of her, the part that never trusted the black family across the street. Her gaze lingered on the Johnsons. She watched Michael laugh, Ethan tossing the football, Angela carrying plates, Kayla twirling with joy. Instead of seeing a happy family, she saw outsiders who didn't belong. And when her stomach twisted with hunger and the smell of ribs floated through her window, a cruel thought took root. They've been grilling all day. What if they took Daisy? Her lips curled, her mind connecting dots that weren't there. The accusation wasn't born out of evidence. It was born out of prejudice. Her shaky hand reached for the phone. 911, the dispatcher answered. Mrs. Henderson's voice was filled with false certainty. Yes, I need officers immediately. My neighbors, the black family across the street, they've been barbecuing all day, and my dog's gone. I think they ate her. The dispatcher hesitated. Ma'am, did you just say you believe your neighbors ate your dog? Yes, she snapped, her voice cracking with grief and anger. I know it was them. Please send someone now. Protocol didn't care how absurd the claim sounded. A report was logged. Units were dispatched. Meanwhile, across the street, the Johnsons had no idea that the peaceful laughter echoing from their home was about to be drowned out by sirens. The distant wail of sirens grew louder, cutting through the night air. Red and blue lights splashed across the Johnsons' home. Michael froze, spatula still in hand. His stomach tightened. He knew that sound, and it never meant anything good. Angela's smile vanished. She pulled Kayla close. Ethan dropped the football, his chest heaving with nervous breaths. 2 squad cars screeched to a stop. Doors slammed. Officers approached with stiff posture, their hands near their belts. The hum of radios filled the silence. Michael raised his hands slightly, his deep voice calm but heavy. "Evening, officers. What seems to be the problem?" One officer, a younger white man with a clipped tone, said, "We received a call from your neighbor. She claims your family may have taken and eaten her dog." The words struck like a slap. Angela gasped. Kayla whispered, "What?" "That's crazy," Ethan's fists clenched, his face burning with humiliation. Michael stood still, swallowing the storm inside him. He had been disrespected before, but this was a different kind of wound. "Officers," he said slowly, his voice steady as stone. "We've been grilling beef ribs. Nothing else. You're welcome to look." The officers searched everything: the grill, the fridge, the trash. They lifted lids, sniffed pots, even pawed through leftovers. The smell of spices and cornbread filled the air, but it no longer brought comfort. Neighbors began gathering, whispering, recording, watching as the Johnsons' dignity was peeled away one glance at a time. Some chuckled, others shook their heads, but none stepped in. Angela's eyes brimmed with tears. Kayla clung to her mother's dress. Ethan's jaw was locked, rage trembling in his bones. And Michael? He stood tall, fists clenched, his chest rising and falling with restrained fury. Every second of that search felt like a branding iron pressed against his skin. And then Mrs. Henderson appeared. In her robe and slippers, hair messy from pacing all day, she stormed across the street. Her pale finger pointed straight at Michael. "That's them!" she cried, her voice dripping with accusation. "They've been grilling all day." "I know they did something to Daisy," the neighborhood murmured. Phones kept recording. Angela shook her head in disbelief. Ethan muttered under his breath, "This is because we're black." Michael locked eyes with Mrs. Henderson. His dark skin glistened with sweat under the flashing lights, but his posture never broke. He didn't need to say a word, for everyone watching knew this wasn't just about a missing dog. It was about race, about dignity, about being judged before being heard. And for the Johnsons, it was only the beginning. The officers finally stepped back from the Johnsons' grill and kitchen. Empty pans, ribs sizzling, cornbread cooling on the counter, nothing remotely connected to a dog. One officer cleared his throat. "Ma'am," he turned to Mrs. Henderson, "there's no evidence your neighbors harmed your pet." But Mrs. Henderson didn't waver. Her pale face twisted with rage, her voice cutting through the night. "Of course they cleaned it up. People like them know how to cover their tracks." Her words hung heavy in the air. People like them. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. Angela's tears spilled over. Kayla sobbed quietly, burying her face in her mother's waist. Ethan shook with anger, his voice low but bitter. "She'll never see us as human." Michael stood still as stone, but his pride felt shredded. A man who had built homes for others, who worked double shifts to give his kids a safe life, reduced to defending himself against accusations too cruel to believe. By now, half the neighborhood had gathered. Porch lights glowed, phones pointed, voices whispered. Some neighbors whispered sympathy. "Poor family. Can you believe this? They've lived here for years, never caused trouble." But others muttered doubts. You never really know what goes on in someone's house. Better safe than sorry. The Johnsons could feel it, the suspicion, the judgment, the silent verdicts being passed. Angela thought of the PTA meetings, where she'd baked cookies and smiled through tight-lipped stares. Michael thought of the long looks he got mowing his lawn, as if a black man couldn't possibly own a house this nice without something shady. Now, all that unspoken tension was boiling into the open. Michael inhaled deeply, his chest heaving. He looked at his children, Ethan fuming, Kayla trembling, and then at Angela, whose dignity was unraveling before the entire street. Something snapped. His deep voice thundered across the yard. "Enough! You've searched our home, shamed my family, and dragged us through the dirt. All because a woman's hate is louder than the truth." The crowd fell silent. Even the officers shifted uncomfortably. He stepped closer to Mrs. Henderson, his dark skin glowing under the flashing lights, his posture towering. "You lost your dog, and that's tragic. But don't you ever use your grief as an excuse to spit on my family's humanity? We're not your suspects. We're your neighbors." Gasps rippled. Phones caught every word. Mrs. Henderson's face burned red. She hissed, "You'll regret this. Everyone here knows what you people are capable of." And then a sound broke the tension. Bark. Bark. From the end of the street came a familiar high-pitched yelp. Daisy, the little white terrier, bounded forward, tail wagging, leash dragging behind her. She had broken free from the yard of another neighbor 2 blocks away, chasing rabbits into the woods. The crowd erupted. Gasps, laughter, whispers of disbelief. Kayla's eyes widened. "It's the dog." The officers exchanged looks, embarrassed. One muttered, "Well, guess that solves it." But the damage was already done. Mrs. Henderson froze as Daisy leapt into her arms, licking her face. Relief washed over her for a split second. But instead of apologizing, she turned back to the Johnsons, her blue eyes narrow. "This doesn't change anything," she spat. "You people bring trouble wherever you go. My Daisy got out because of all the noise you make. You don't belong here." "None of you." The cruelty cut deeper than the accusation. Angela gasped, pressing her hands to her chest. Ethan stormed forward, but Michael's strong arm stopped him. Kayla clung to her mother tighter. Michael's voice dropped, low and steady. "One day, Mrs. Henderson, hate like yours is going to eat you alive. And when it does, my family will still be standing. Because we don't break that easy," the crowd murmured. For the first time, neighbors began shifting uncomfortably. Not at the Johnsons, but at Mrs. Henderson. Her hate was naked, undeniable. Phones captured every second. And by the next morning, those videos would spread further than their little street could ever imagine. Within hours, clips of the confrontation flooded social media. The caption read, "White woman accuses black family of eating her dog. Guess who showed up alive?" Millions watched. Millions shared. Hashtags trended. News outlets picked it up. Comments poured in. "This poor family. They deserve an apology. This is racism in its purest form. Protect the Johnsons." The Johnsons, once invisible, were suddenly a national story. But with the spotlight came pressure. Some praised them, others mocked them. Hate mail filled their inbox. Angela cried as she read threats. Ethan seethed, wanting to fight back. Kayla asked why people were so mean. And Michael? He felt the weight of protecting not just his family, but their dignity, their future. Days later, a letter arrived, an invitation. A local community center wanted Michael to speak at a town hall on racial profiling. They called him a voice of strength for standing tall during the humiliation. Michael hesitated. He wasn't a speaker. He wasn't an activist. He was just a father who grilled ribs in his backyard. But when he looked at Ethan's burning eyes, Angela's trembling hands, and Kayla's innocent questions, he knew he couldn't stay silent. What started as a false accusation was about to turn into something far greater. The Johnsons' fight wasn't just for their own dignity anymore. It was for every black family who had ever been accused, doubted, and humiliated simply for existing. The community center buzzed with voices. Folding chairs lined the hall. News cameras pointed at the podium. Posters about equality and justice hung on the walls. The Johnsons sat in the front row. Angela's hands folded tight in her lap. Ethan's jaw clenched. Kayla holding a teddy bear for comfort. When Michael stepped up to the microphone, the room quieted. His tall frame, dark skin, and calloused hands carried years of hard work and quiet dignity. He took a deep breath. I didn't ask for this spotlight. I'm just a father who wanted to grill ribs with his family. But because of the color of our skin, we were accused of something unthinkable, something cruel, something that stripped us of dignity in front of our own neighbors. Gasps echoed through the hall. The weight of his words pressed down on every heart. His voice shook at first, then grew strong. We weren't accused because there was evidence. We were accused because we're black. And that's what racism does. It makes suspicion louder than truth. It makes hate heavier than love. He glanced at Angela. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Ethan's eyes burned with pride. Kayla smiled, as if seeing her father as a hero for the first time. Michael continued. Mrs. Henderson lost her dog, but what she really lost was her humanity. And when she pointed at us, the cops, the neighbors, the world, they all looked our way too. That's the burden we carry. But let me tell you this, my family will not break, because dignity is stronger than hate. The hall erupted into applause. Some stood, some cried. Reporters scribbled notes furiously. Cameras flashed. Michael Johnson, a quiet, hard-working father, had just become the voice of something bigger than himself. While the Johnsons were lifted up, Mrs. Henderson faced the opposite. Videos of her accusations spread like wildfire. Her words, "You people bring trouble wherever you go," echoed across the internet. Her job called her in. Her boss frowned. "We can't keep someone who brings this kind of attention." She was fired. Neighbors stopped waving. Parents pulled their kids away from her. Daisy, once a source of joy, now barked behind closed blinds, rarely seen outside. For the first time, Mrs. Henderson felt the isolation of being judged, not for her skin, but for her actions. But unlike the Johnsons, she had no strength to carry her shame. She shrank into bitterness. Weeks later, the Johnsons received another letter. This time, it wasn't an invitation. It was a job offer for Michael. The local mayor's office wanted him as a community advisor on race relations. His courage had not gone unnoticed. Angela's bakery began seeing more customers than ever before, people coming to support her after the ordeal. Ethan was offered a scholarship by an organization fighting racial profiling. Kayla's schoolteacher praised her for standing tall despite the bullying she faced. From humiliation grew opportunities they never imagined. One evening, as autumn leaves swirled across the street, a knock came at the Johnsons' door. Michael opened it to find Mrs. Henderson. Her once proud posture was gone. Her face was pale, tired, lined with shame. Daisy sat quietly by her feet. She whispered, voice trembling, "I came to say I was wrong about everything. I let my grief My prejudice, my hate blind me. I'm sorry, Angela froze. Ethan's fists clenched. Kayla peeked out from behind her mother. The silence stretched long. Finally, Michael's deep voice broke it. Apologies don't erase wounds, but they can start healing. If you're truly sorry, you'll have to prove it, not just to us, but to yourself. Mrs. Henderson nodded, tears brimming. She turned and walked away, shoulders heavy, but perhaps for the first time, her heart cracked open to the truth. Months later, the Johnson story became part of local history. Schools invited Michael to speak. Angela's bakery became a hub of warmth and community. Ethan studied law, vowing to fight for justice. Kayla began writing stories about families like hers, resilient, proud, unbroken. And through it all, they carried the lesson etched deep by that humiliating night. Racism seeks to strip dignity, but dignity, when guarded fiercely, cannot be stolen. They were accused of something unthinkable. They were humiliated in front of neighbors, doubted by the very people who should have known better. But the Johnson family refused to break. Because dignity is not given by others, it is carried within. And in the face of racism, dignity shines brighter than hate. The world saw a family humiliated, but what they left behind was a legacy of strength,